Thank you. Mr. Fahey?
Thank you, Judge. Judge, what is Tom Gaffney doing here? What in the world did he do that rose to the level of criminal conduct? As best as I understand the state's case, they're applauding Tom Gaffney, congratulating him for doing all that excellent work out on the street, for acting professionally, for showing patience, for showing great restraint in his encounter with Juan McDonald. But they disagree with the report that he wrote. And because they disagree with the report that he wrote, he must have attached himself to some type of conspiracy to obstruct justice, some type of conspiracy to prevent independent criminal investigators of finding the real truth of what happened to Laquan McDonald during the shooting. The evidence will show, Judge, that that theory is complete and utter nonsense. What the state doesn't have, and what they didn't tell you, Judge, is they don't have a lick of evidence that there was any type of conspiracy here. They don't have a shred of evidence that Tom Gaffney agreed to obstruct what really happened to Laquan McDonald during the course of the shooting. In fact, Judge, the evidence is going to show just the opposite. Tom Gaffney was not a witness to the shooting. He didn't see what happened during the shooting. He never said he saw what happened during the shooting. How the heck could he ever be part of an agreement to conceal the real facts of what happened during that shooting that he never saw? You know, there's a sad irony here, Judge, because there absolutely was an independent criminal investigation into this matter. The investigation actually began with the Chicago Police Department. These detectives made sure that the video evidence that led to the charges against Jason Van Dyke was preserved. They made sure it was inventoried, and they made sure it was available to every one of those independent investigators. And it started right after the shooting, not just with detectives like David March, but with the Independent Police Review Authority. They were out there right after the shooting. They were doing a parallel investigation. They had access to the same evidence that the department had recovered. They had access to the witnesses that they had uncovered. And they took those statements and they conducted their investigation. But it didn't stop there. Shortly after the shooting, there was a criminal investigation conducted by the Cook County State Attorney's Office, conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and conducted by the United States Attorney's Office. And at the conclusion of that independent criminal investigation, charges were brought against Jason Van Dyke. And the evidence will show that Tom Gaffney cooperated with every one of those investigations. He did nothing wrong. He had absolutely nothing to hide. Of course, he was going to cooperate with them and tell them what happened. And there was never even a whiff of any misconduct on behalf of Thomas Gaffney. But yet he finds himself here charged with these crimes that he didn't commit. I just want to correct, I have the greatest respect for Mr. McKay. I just want to correct one part of his opening statement. The Inspector General never recommended client be fired. That didn't happen. What the evidence will show, and I don't want to repeat it because I know Mr. McKay has gone over it at great length. As we all know at this point, my client, Tom Gaffney, was the first officer to respond to the call. He was the first officer who encountered Laquan McDonald that night. He and his partner, Joe McGilligan, dressed head to toe in full police uniform, bulletproof vest, marked squad car. No mystery as to who they were when they rolled up on the scene. And they did have a brief conversation with the person we now know to be Rudy Barillas. It was very brief. It was very brief because Laquan McDonald had fled the area after committing the burglary. And Mr. Barillas points to where he went, points north to 40th Street. He went that way, gives him a description. And then Officer Gaffney rolls up to 40th Street in his squad. When they turn east, they see LaQuan McDonald. At that point, his partner, Joe McElligott, does get out of the squad. And I agree with the prosecution. He was told, show me your hands. And there's a reason why he did that. Because he had his hands in his pocket. And when he removed his right hand, he was armed with a knife. And Officer McElligott's response, he knew this was a threatening situation. He immediately unholstered and readied his firearm. It didn't stop there, though. After he told him to show the hands, the next obvious command was drop the knife. For God's sakes, that's all you had to do. Drop the knife. But he didn't tell him once. He told him several times. But that command was ignored. LaQuan McDonald starts to walk east. It's about 2 blocks, approximately 2 blocks away from Pulaski Avenue when he starts walking east. Joe McElligott notifies Tom Gaffney that he's armed with a knife. What does Tom do? Exactly what we want our police to do. Call for additional resources. We've got a real threat here. He gets on the radio, calls for a backup, calls for a taser. And then they follow him. And all the way, Officer McElligott, with his gun out in one hand and his flashlight out in the other, drop the knife. Telling him just drop the knife. But as he continues eastbound, Officer Gaffney rightfully makes the right tactical decision. He knows he has to block him. He can't let an armed offender just walk into a Burger King restaurant populated with citizens. So he does a perfectly sound tactical maneuver. He takes his squad, turns it south, and blocks LaQuan McDonald, hoping maybe at that point, LaQuan McDonald would just drop the knife and submit to the arrest. Or at the very least, Officer Gaffney was hoping that he could divert him down Karloff, where it was an industrial area, away from the populated area that he was headed towards. And when he did that, LaQuan McDonald wasn't going to submit, certainly wasn't going to drop the knife, slashed the tire with the knife. Disabled Officer Gaffney's squad car, used his weapon to make good his escape from the arrest. It didn't end there. Tom still wasn't going to give up on trying to divert him from the populated area. He inched his squad car up a little bit further. LaQuan McDonald is now on the passenger side of his squad car, facing him, eye to eye. He raises the knife. State forgot to tell you about this part. Raises his knife, looking right at my client who's in the driver's seat, and smashes the knife on the windshield. That was the insult. Any reasonable person would come to that same conclusion. That essentially ended my client's encounter with LaQuan McDonald. Because LaQuan McDonald then moved east and started to run through the parking lot. Other assisting units came to the scene, and my client couldn't pursue him anymore because his squad was disabled. And he never saw what happened out on Pulaski with regards to the shooting. Judge, as a result of this encounter that my client had with LaQuan McDonald, there's certain reports he had to generate. Your Honor's going to have the benefit of those reports. He has to fill out an officer battery report. Now, a lot's been made about, well, he wasn't battered. Why is he doing an officer battery report? This is the form that back in 2014, the department used. It wasn't just for officers who were battered. As the name would suggest, It's also for officers who were victims of aggravated battery, for officers who were victims of aggravated assault, and God forbid, even murder. That form is filled out when police officers are murdered, presumably by a sergeant. It's called an officer battery report, but it includes and it requires officers to fill that report out when you were assaulted. And make no mistake about it, Your Honor, the evidence is going to show Clown McDonald faced him right in the eye, raised that knife, and when he raised that knife at my client, Tom Gaffney, he readied himself. He readied himself to use lethal force. And he made a split-second decision not to use force. So he fills out the report. First, you have to fill out the TRR, which is the Tactical Response Report, and Your Honor will have the benefit of that report. The purpose of that report, which by the way, the evidence will show you have to fill out that report to get to the officer battery report. The purpose of the Tactical Response Report is it's a report where you actually check off boxes where you're describing the subject's actions, the subject in this case being Clown McDonald, and you're describing him as a certain threat. And my client describes him as an assailant. Because when he was at 40th and Karloff, he raised the knife and assaulted him. He's an armed assailant at that point. And the evidence will show there was nothing false at all in that TRR report. He then also has to fill out an officer battery report. And again, it's for assaults. So when it asks for the number of officers battered, it can just as easily read number of officers assaulted because the same report applies to both. And if I'm to understand the state's theory, they disagree with the way Tom filled out that report. Okay? The fact that you may disagree with the police report, the fact that you may disagree with the way a portion of that report is written, doesn't make it a false report. And it certainly doesn't make it official misconduct or obstructing justice. And if you fill out a form that you think should have been corrected, or a change should have been made to that form, that doesn't make it false. We need to dispel with that whole myth that Tom filed a false report or that any of these men filed a false report. Disagreeing with the report doesn't make it false. And Judge, at the conclusion of this evidence that you're going to hear here, we're going to ask you to put an end to this madness and find them not guilty of all the charges. Thank you.